All right. Good afternoon, everybody. On with it, I suppose. Let's see here. I'm guessing you can hear me. I'd like to kindly ask if one of you could maybe just confirm if you can see my if you can hear me and if you can see my screen. Okay, thanks. I see a couple of thumbs up there. Right, thank you very much. Right. Let's see here. All right. So today, right, I'm hoping we can kind of finalize our discussion of project management artifacts. So a reminder that what we've been doing these last couple of sessions is, in essence, trying to understand how exactly we ought to execute those different activities associated with our research project. We realize that there's a number of things that are expected of us, right? So let me see if I can up this up. Is this any better? I can increase the volume from my panel here. Is this any better? Hopefully it's better now. Right. So we are discussing, right? We're trying to appreciate the importance of managing our project. In essence, executing these activities in such a way that we deliver, right? We finalize or execute a project within the expected timeline. If you can mute your microphone, I don't know if it's Vincent, something like that. Thank you very much. Right, and so what we've done so far is we've looked at two main project management artifacts, right? Things that we'll typically find in our in a typical proposal. So we discussed a Gantt chart, and we realized that for us to come up with a Gantt chart, one of the things that we ought to do is we have got to first of all prepare what we introduce as a work breakdown structure. So this hierarchical structure that ideally showcases how the project has been decomposed, in essence, right? How the project has been decomposed. Let me just see here if how the project has been decomposed, in essence. Okay, so pretty straightforward stuff. Most of the heavy lifting is supposed to be done by yourself. So in your respective groups, you sit down and you seriously look at the range of activities as they relate to the project itself. So for instance, as part of the proposal drafting phase, what different activities did you perform or would you expect to perform? How about when you're collecting data, what are you going to be doing, right? You list all of those things. And ideally for each or for some key activities, what you must do is you must also identify what we introduced as key points in the project timeline. So important events. Okay. And the idea behind these important events here is you're supposed to mark the milestones. Okay. In addition to these important events, you have got to identify activities that are going to result in some tangible output. Okay. We call that a deliverable, is it? Not really tangible, really, but a product in essence, right? So you identify your milestones and your deliverables. And what we realized is that once we have that information, then for each activity, each of those different things we've decomposed, we attach important information such as a unique identifier for that activity or task, the ID in essence. Of course, we'd already have the name at that point in time, but we also have got to indicate when exactly we're going to start working on that item. It's like if you come up with 20 tasks, for each and every one of those tasks, what you do is you identify the start date, when you indicate when exactly you're going to start working on that task, how long you anticipate it's going to take for you to complete that task. In essence, you have got to estimate. Okay. Um, and then afterwards, what you do is you essentially make use of a project planning software too. Like I introduced you to Project Libre. Incidentally, what I did yesterday is I reinstalled Project Libre because I'd upgraded my operating system, which is why I was unable to perform some functionalities, if you remember, right? So once you fire up Project Libre here, in this particular case, if I were to open up, not create a new one, but if I were to open up the project we're working towards, we started working on yesterday, this pod file. Just come here and open up this thing, and some of the things that I wanted to illustrate was this notion that you can define summary tasks by taking advantage of a feature within Project Libre. So in this particular case, for instance, I'm just going to unindent this here. I couldn't indent or out-indent last time, but you notice what I've done for these tasks here, all of these things here. You know, initially last time we had them like this, right? And as you're using Project Libre, like in this particular case, let's say I wanted to mark the fact that I don't know about that. I wanted to mark the fact that lecture 1 has been completed. I would probably have a milestone called lecture 1 completed or finalized or something. Okay. And lecture 1 finalized for me is a way of indicating that it's a milestone, right? I'm marking the fact that we've finished covering lecture series number 1. So I indicate that as a milestone. And because it's a milestone, we realize that we have got to tell Project Libre in this particular case, the tool we're using, that the duration for this milestone is 0. And the moment I indicate that the duration is 0 here, what I'm going to get is a diamond symbol here, right? Up here, it's in black. I don't know if you can see here. So this indicates that it's a milestone. Now, we also made mention of the fact that, and by the way, I can probably anticipate and say, lecture series, let's just make things up here. Lecture series number, because we're on 7 right now, let's say lecture series number 12 or something is going to start. We're anticipating that we're going to start lecture series number 12 maybe in the last week of September or something like that. So I'm going to mark this as 1st September. Okay. 1st September. And then I'm going to say this thing is just going to run for 10 days or something like that. Right. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to zoom out here so that I have this activity here. But all the while, we know that this is lecture series number 3. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 10. This is just meant to showcase something. Now, you see, we've defined specific tasks here, right? And milestones associated with the summary task called lectures. The idea behind this example is we know that the course itself, right, 2034, has got other activities, like we have tutorials. We also have assessments. So in terms of assessments here, I could say we have class theory test number 1, class theory test number 2. And then we have, in fact, what I could do here is I could make this a lot easier as well and just say, under assessments, we have class theory tests, right? And then we also have what? Group-based project or something. Under group-based project, we have proposal, drafting. Or I'll just call this proposal document. Okay, I'll just call this research proposal. And then I'm going to say research proposal document. And I'm going to say research proposal presentation or something. Okay, enough of this. So the idea behind this is that if you notice these lectures, right, 1 through to 12 here, these are supposed to be encapsulated under lectures, the lecture summary task. So what you do with Project Libre is you have to indent this. And you notice when I'm indenting, right, there's this new visualization that just popped up on top here. If you notice, it's in black here. right? A solid line with edges on either end, indicating that there are some activities that fall under this summary task. And I can do the same thing under assessments, right? I'll come here and just say, I'm going to indent everything that is under assessments here. But because I haven't indicated the date here, it doesn't appear, I mean, the visual representation is not really that appealing here. But as soon as I start adjusting the dates here, it will be adjusted accordingly. And yeah, accordingly. And I was going to say, we could say group-based project began with, I'm going to just say project team selection or something, so that I showcase this stuff. And project team selection kind of took place, let's just say, from, I guess, March 3rd, and let's say it took 14 days or something. No, 7 days actually. You notice this thing here, right? The assessment, the assessment activity summary task here, it's being adjusted accordingly based on the start date, the earliest date for the subtasks associated with it, and the latest end date in essence. So it's going to be adjusted for you automatically. Another one, what you do here is you start, making necessary changes. Like for instance, in this particular case, I'll say, well, I have class theory test and class theory test. These are supposed to be under class theory test. So I'm going to indent these again, right? Under group project, all of these things here are under group-based project, like so. Do you understand this? So we went through this process. You are all encouraged to go and install Project Libre and just play around with this thing here, right? It can't be any harder. It's just point and click, really. It's not that difficult for you to create a timeline like this. What's important is you understand the notation that is used here, I guess. On with it. Now, it turns out that there's a couple of other things that you need to take into account, right? When you're dealing with project management, and especially issues as they relate to assignment of roles. Generally, you would be working as part of the project that has a lot of people performing different functions, roles, in other words. And whenever you have a lot of people, working on the same problem, there are usually, issues that arise, especially as they relate to conflicts, for instance, issues, especially as they relate to things like who takes accountability when something goes wrong. Imagine a situation where you were supposed to submit, and some of you have done this, you're supposed to submit the research proposal on the 8th of August, and then nobody submits the proposal, right? The question to ask is, who is going to be accountable? Who takes responsibility for that important task? Have you agreed? Do you have a meeting and you agreed that, you agreed as to who exactly was going to be responsible? So this brings us to this discussion of an important, what I consider an important, mandatory actually, project management artifact that allows you to indicate or to assign roles and responsibilities to project team members. It's called the RACI matrix, right? And RACI really is just an acronym for responsible, accountable, consulted or communicated, and informed, right? So you assign these different roles to the project team members in this particular case. And it turns out that the input to this project management artifact is, again, your breakdown structure, right? So it's like once you decompose your project and identify the smallest units of work, you then have got to specify, right, the resources that you are attaching to each one of those different tasks. So something similar to what you're seeing on this screen, right? Notice a column here called resources, which we've added, right? The budget here. So your so-called RACI matrix really is a project management artifact or tool that it facilitates clear and well-defined roles and responsibilities by specifying specific project team members who are responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for each and every task. So it's like once you decompose your project like this, task T1 through to T12, for T1, you identify or you indicate who is going to be responsible for T1, who is accountable, who is supposed to be consulted, and who should be informed. For task 12, who is responsible, who is accountable, who should be consulted, who should be informed. Right? And the way we are defining these different roles here is we're saying uh, uh, an entity is responsible, is tagged as being responsible if he's the one who is going to be performing the task. So if you are supposed to, if you're supposed to, if you're supposed to write a proposal document amongst the five of you, who exactly is going to be writing the proposal? Now, these are tags. And because they are tags, it does not necessarily mean that you must assign just one person, right? You must associate one person to each of these different tags. You can, for instance, have multiple project team members being responsible for a task. And I do encourage you guys to do that, right? For especially for critical tasks, make sure that all five of you are responsible for a task. But unless if you know, when you're busy drafting the proposal, you probably out of five, maybe you decide for us to be efficient, two people will be pushed to start working on the proposal presentation slide deck. The other three are focusing on the document itself. And by focusing, it doesn't mean that they're dissociated from the process of either putting together a proposal slide deck and the research proposal document itself. No, we're just saying that they're going to be playing a more active role on what they're assigned, what they're supposed to be responsible for. Accountable means that when you tag an entity or an individual as being accountable, what you're saying is they're the ones who are going to be answerable for any success or failure of that task. So, for instance, if you're supposed, if you've assigned project team member one to submit the, I mean, if you've, yeah, so if you've identified one project team member to be the one who is going to submit the proposal, the question is, so that person is the one who's going to be performing the task, right, of uploading the the proposal. The other question I've got to answer is, in the event that that person fails to upload the proposal, who is going to be accountable? You understand? Now, in certain organizations here, if it's a failure, if you fail at performing a particular task here, a person who's accountable is going to be disciplined somehow, right? So maybe during your performance appraisal or something, the issue is going to pop up. If it's a critical task here, you get fired. You know, they'll fire you. It's sad like that. But I don't know about getting fired here. You know, so an entity is accountable if they are answerable for success or failure of the task. And then you assign the consulted tag to an entity or a person that provides any valuable input or advice, right? But is not directly involved with the task itself. So I'll give you an example, right? When I'm, yeah, so when I'm working with research students, masters and PhD students, for instance, I'm their supervisor, right? I am not responsible for any task. Never. I am not responsible. I'm not accountable for any of the tasks they're performing. However, because I act as their advisor or supervisor, I can be consulted, right? We have regular meetings where I'm consulted. You know, I'm having trouble with statistical analysis. What do you think here? And then, as part of the consultation here, I'm providing input by way of guiding the student. Go and read this book. Go and read this paper. Okay? And then in some instances, it turns out that depending on how you're working, there are certain people whom or entities whom you will need to inform about the progress of the task itself. They may not be directly involved in what's going on, but you're informing them, right? Because maybe they're a stakeholder in what is happening. So in essence, this is what you do with the RESI matrix. The key thing here is it helps with accountability. Sometimes, right? Sometimes what tends to happen, I'll give you an example of submitting a proposal document, is the person who makes a mistake will probably make the argument that I did not know that I was the one who was supposed to submit that assignment. I thought somebody else was supposed to submit the assignment. We never agreed on all those things. So the idea behind the race matrix is it avoids all those conflicts, right, and gray areas as they relate to who is supposed to do what in the project. And so really we see that the advantage of a race matrix is that um, it makes it possible for project team members to understand their roles and responsibilities. They're going to be clearly outlined. And you're doing this at the beginning of the proposal, right? I mean, at the beginning of the research itself. So that somewhere down the line, when you're busy with data analysis, you already know who exactly is going to be responsible for each and every task. And of course, it goes without saying that using this sort of systematic approach to assignment of roles makes it possible, or rather, it facilitates accountability and task ownership. I know that if I'm the one who's been tasked to submit the proposal document, I'll be on the lookout for the deadline, right? I'll be reminding people because I'm the one responsible. Guys, today is the 29th. The course instructor, Lighton, has said that the submission is supposed to be done on the 4th of August. We only have 6 days left. Okay. We see here that, again, it sort of like helps you to prevent any potential conflicts, right? It helps in conflict resolution because you know who is responsible for what. And there's nothing like, no, I was not the one who was assigned this task here. Why am I being pushed and stuff? Or I was not informed in good time, because you're doing this, long before you actually start the full-on execution of the project itself. In addition, though, we see that your RESI metrics also facilitate improved communication, right? As it helps you indicate individuals that have to be communicated, for instance, when necessary, in case of something very, very important. Okay. Hope this is making sense here. What else? We see here that it helps in the efficient execution of project tasks, right? By preventing duplication of effort. So if you're 5 of you with a RESI matrix, you can easily allocate resources. So, well, we are currently busy with a proposal, but as part of us working on the proposal summary task, we have got to write the proposal document. We have to create the screencast. We have to create the presentation slide decks. For us to make sure that we are done with this in the next 6 days, let's assign roles and responsibilities as follows. Project member 1 and 2 are going to focus on the proposal document. Project team member 3 is going to look into identifying an appropriate tool to create the screencast and make necessary arrangements. Project team member number 4 and number 5 are going to work on the presentation slide deck. Project team member number 1 is going to be responsible for submitting the proposal document itself via Moodle. Project team member number 5 is the one who's going to be responsible for submitting the presentation slide decks and the screencast. Done. Right? You're efficient like that. And you'll notice that you'll be able to quickly work through the tasks, right? The more urgent tasks here. Now, just showcasing how the assignment of responsibility would be here. Like you notice here that we've come up with this matrix where the roles here are we're indicating who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And then the roles, those are columns, the roles would be the individuals, right, that are working on the project. This example is like a software engineering kind of example, but the idea is the same here. So we see here that for task number 1, the person who's responsible is analyst number 1, and then the person accountable is assistant project manager. Person who should be consulted is the chief technology officer, and the person who's informed is the project manager or something. Ultimately, what you would rather do is come up with something that is similar to this, right? So you're just like transposing this. Your columns become the different roles of the people working on the project, and then your rows here, we still have the tasks as the labels. In the content pane here, you are indicating tags, right? The responsibilities, actual responsibilities. Who is going to be for task number 1 out of all of these different project team members, right? What is their role? What is the role of project manager as it relates to task number 1? We see that he's just supposed to be informed. Assistant project manager is accountable. Business analyst number 1 is responsible. Chief technology officer is consulted, right? And ultimately, you are interested in coming up with something like this, So this is an example of the enterprise medical imaging in Zambia project. We have this in one of the documents. I don't know if there are any thoughts or questions about this. I'm just going to switch my connection here because I've noticed it started. Is this clear enough? Are there any questions about the race metrics? Okay.
Masafapunza sivimbeka na progress metrics.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. No, I don't know if that was a question or not or something. But either way, so that's a race matrix. And then there's another important issue that has come up, right? I've been singing this song for quite some time, risk management, right? So there's this notion that in life, whenever you are working on a long-term project, there are bad things that can potentially happen, things that can adversely affect whatever it is you're doing. It's like the program you're pursuing right now, right? If you think about it, I don't know if how you view what you're doing here at UNZA. You can view the entire 4 years you're spending at UNZA, if not more, as a project, or you can view these different years, like first year, second year, third year, fourth year, as projects. So if you just think of the current year, right? You guys are in second year as a project. You begin to realize that there are certain things that can adversely affect your progression towards third year. And these things that can adversely affect what you're doing in second year, what we are calling risks, right? Things that can go wrong. Like, for instance, you can fail LIS 2034. Yeah, there's a risk. There's a risk that you may fail the course here, right? I don't know what else here. There's a risk that you may find yourself, I guess, making friends with very bad people, right? If you can call that a risk or something. Or there's a risk that you start engaging in drugs. Now, we are treading on dangerous waters here, but I'm just putting it out there, right? Usually when you're working on a project, there are certain things that can go wrong. And so the idea behind risk management is to identify all the things that can adversely affect the research project in this particular case, do an analysis of those things. We'll talk about that. You come up with a plan, right, on what you are going to do if one of those things that you've identified as potentially affecting the project, when it does happen, what are you going to do? And then, more importantly, for the entire duration of the project, you constantly monitor those things that can go wrong. I'll give you an example, right? Let's stop the funny example of what can go wrong in second year here. We know. But when you're conducting your research in your respective teams, you're 5 of you, there is there's a possibility that one of you will get so seriously sick that they will not actively participate in the project. Happens. There's a possibility that one of your project team members will leave the project. And irrespective of whether it's a research project, a software development project, an engineering project, those are things that will almost always happen. And it has happened in some of your groups. Just because you've identified it doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen, right? But the important thing is, if it does happen, what do you do? So it's like we've identified the risk as being a project team member leaving the project, right? Withdrawing or something, or changing programs or something like that. you know and that's risk identification. And then as part of risk analysis, it's like, sure, we've figured out that there's a possibility that one of us will withdraw or will leave the project team. But the question to ask is, what is the likelihood that one of us will leave the project team? What are the odds, right? There are certain things that are more likely to happen, some things are less likely to happen. More importantly, as part of analysis, you'll be asking questions like, if this thing does happen, if one of us leaves the project, what is the impact going to be on the project? What are the consequences? What you're doing is you're doing risk analysis. And then in the third phase, I'm going to walk you through the phases here so that you understand. You come up with a plan, right? So you come up with like contingency plans. If one of us does leave, just in case one of us leaves, what can we do? Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that for each, when we're assigning roles here, each task must have at least, at a bare minimum, at least 2 people attached to it. So that out of the 2, if one of them leaves, there will still be one person who is very knowledgeable about what was being done in the task itself. You're coming up with a plan. Now, don't say Lighton told us we should assign 2 people to each task. I'm just giving an example, right? If you want, you could say, if you want a foolproof contingency plan here, so say each and every task is going to be assigned to all 5 project team members. There we go, right? There'll be times, right? Maybe those 2 people that you've assigned here are both doing geography and they have to go, I don't know, to Chikankat or something to go and do field work. And they tell you a couple of days, maybe 2 days before submission of an important deliverable for the project, to say, we are both out on field work, we don't have internet access here, so we haven't been able to work on this task, right? Those are all risks. Anyhow, so and then monitoring, right? Where, because if you identify things that can go wrong, and you're going to be doing this for, let's say, 6 months or something, or 4 months, in your case, you're going to be doing this, let's say August and September, right? For the next 2 months or something like that. It's like, for the next couple of weeks, we have got to come up with a plan on how we are going to be assessing these things we've identified as risks. So maybe every week we'll sit. We identified the likelihood, the probability scores, probability of a risk from happening and the impact that it will have. After 1 week, has the picture changed? What you begin to notice is that the impact and the likelihood, these things will change, right, as you progress through the project. Anyhow, so these are the key phases of project management. And so we see here that as part of risk identification, all you're doing is you're sitting down as a team, and then this is what you're going to do here by Monday. You sit down and you identify everything that can go wrong in your project. All right? And then you figure out exactly what it's going to be affecting here. It's not a difficult thing to do here, although sometimes it's easier for somebody like me who's been doing this for a long time, because I'll use my intuition, is it, and my experience or something. But the things that can go wrong would be things, you can view them as being things that will affect the research itself, the management of the project, and all those things. Just showcasing some obvious examples of what can go wrong. You end up underestimating, right? When we're coming up with our work plan here, the methodology, the data collection is just going to take us 1 week, will be done. 1 week later, you notice that you are nowhere near the finish line here. You'd have underestimated. So this is just a list of example risks, right, that you'd identify here. And there are people really that have come up with interesting ways of categorizing these risks, if you will, right? So a slide is just showcasing a paper by, I've forgotten the author here, showcasing how risks as they relate to software in this particular case can be categorized. Okay, so there are risks associated with the time, pricing information, risks associated with the resources, skill set required to execute the project, for instance. Anyhow, um, just to mention here that I think in your POMBO guide you have what's called risk breakdown structure. It showcases how you can narrow down on specific risks by using a top-down approach, right, where you figure out technical risks, management-centric risks, and all those things. So, as part of the first phase, risk identification, you're just identifying things that can go wrong. And then once you identify things that can go wrong, for each of the things that you've identified as potentially adversely affecting your project, you have got to figure out the likelihood what is the probability that that risk is actually going to happen. What is the likelihood that it will actually happen, right? In addition, for each and every risk you've identified, what is the impact of that risk on the project? If it does happen, what's the impact going to be? And using these two things here, the likelihood and the consequence, you can actually prioritize your risks, right? You order them you come up with a prioritized list of risks so that you know what to watch out for, in essence. Now, in case you're wondering, well, but Lighton, how exactly do we indicate the likelihood or something? You can use a Likert scale, right? Like, so you say, we're going to use a 5-point scale here. And for each and every risk that we've identified, we indicate whether it's very low, it's the probability that it will happen, or the likelihood that it will happen is very low, moderate, high, or very high. So this would be like a group-based activity. I mean, the same thing with the impact of the risk on the project itself, the research project. You would say the impact is going to be catastrophic, serious, tolerable, or insignificant. It's like when one of you leaves, what is the impact here, right, on the research project? It's going to be very serious here, because instead of 4 people working on the project, instead of 5 people working on the project, you have 4. There is a risk that some project team members will not actively participate in the project. What is the impact? Or maybe it's tolerable, right? I don't know. But the important thing is you have got to do this in your respective groups. You sit down and you indicate. Just some examples of what we do here. You have your probability score, the likelihood, and the effect or the impact here. And what you do here, because you're using a Likert scale, is you can assign numbers. Typically, Likert scale ranges from a number 1 all the way up to maybe 3 or 5 or 7 or something. So in this particular case, very low is 1, low is 2, moderate is 3, high is 4, very high is 5, right? Insignificant is 1, tolerable is 2, serious is 3, catastrophic is 4, right? So you can view these texts here as being numbers in essence, so that using those numbers, you can maybe just multiply the 2 numbers and come up with a product which is going to give you some priority score or something. And then you order them based on the largest product of the 2. All right. Just different visualizations showcasing exactly how you can prioritize these risks, right? If you notice here, in this particular diagram, in our x-axis, we're showcasing the likelihood or probability scores here, right? The very low, medium, high, and then the y-axis is the impact on the project. So what we're saying is that you'd want to prioritize focusing on or keeping an eye out on the risks that are in this A quadrant here, right? Why? Because these are the ones that are more likely to happen and at the same time have the most adverse effect on the project. Not that I'm saying you're neglecting the others, but in terms of directing resources, what you'd be doing here is you'd be directing more resources to these things that are in the top right corner, in essence. Yeah. Again, another way of visualizing this in this particular case is from the POMBO guide, the Project Management Board of Knowledge guide that I told you about. Using your probability scores, you get the the product here, and your product will again indicate, to give you an idea of what you should prioritize, in essence. So in other words, all you are doing as part of risk analysis is the end result is to come up with a prioritized list of risks. You are ordering the risks in order of what is very important, what is more likely to happen, and all those things. For you to do that, for each risk, you determine the likelihood or the extent towards which the risk is likely to happen or something. And then you also determine the impact of the risk on the project if it does happen. And then afterwards, it's risk planning. And so risk planning here is you're coming up with concrete plans, right? To either avoid these things you've identified as potentially affecting your project, from happening, or minimizing their effects. Now, if you think about it, right, there are certain things that you can avoid, certain things that you cannot avoid. They will happen, but you minimize. You see, you can't avoid. There's no way of avoiding someone leaving the project, is there? Right? Is there a way? I don't think so. Right? You want to think about this, right? It's like, I'll come back to this here. There's certain things that you have control over. Let's talk about control here. There are certain things that you have control over. You don't have control over someone leaving, right? If somebody makes a decision to say, I'm leaving school here, you won't see me again beginning next week. What are you going to do? You don't know why they're doing this. Maybe they have a serious problem at home. They need to take care of a sick relative or something, and they've made a decision. I'm not in a good place psychologically. I'll just come back next year or something. However, when somebody is lazy, right, when they're not working, there's something you can do there. You can threaten them. We're going to report you to the course instructor here, or we will remove you from our group or something like that, right? There's certain things that you can do. But here's the thing. What you're doing as part of risk planning is, for each risk, what you do is you come up with a strategy on how you're going to get around that problem when it does happen. And getting around something, like something that can potentially go wrong here, will entail coming up with avoidance strategies, right? You want to avoid something from going wrong. Or, in some instances, you work towards minimizing the likelihood that thing will go wrong. But there are instances where you cannot avoid or minimize anything here. Like the example I was giving, somebody is withdrawing from campus. How are you going to avoid that or minimize that? It's something that's outside of your control, right? But being lazy, right? Being lazy is something that you can avoid, or you can minimize the likelihood that your project team members will not actively participate in the project. Is the point I'm trying to put across here. For instances where you cannot avoid or minimize, you come up with a contingency plan. It's like something has happened. We can minimize the likelihood that somebody is going to be lazy by issuing threats. You will be chucked out of the group. We shall report you to the course instructor. We shall report you to the tutor. But you cannot do anything when somebody decides to leave. So what do? You come up with a contingency plan. Something has happened. Well, we're going to be working extra hard now, the 4 remaining project team members. If we are putting in 2 hours every day in the project, it's going to be 2.5 hours to make up for the person who's left. Do you understand this? There's a hand up, I think. Yes, Christopher.
Yes, okay. I'm interested in 2 documents that you shared.
Yep.
The first one is, so the first one is the document where you shared, where we had the elements of the proposal, and the other one has to do with the sample of a proposal that was done by our seniors. Yeah, I see these guys as Mubanga Chibes or something like that. So yeah, following the elements that you shared, the elements end up to, okay, let me just say in the elements, I've not seen something like uh, the proposed solutions. Then in the other work that these guys, our seniors, that they did their proposed solutions. So I want to find out if we are going to follow strictly the elements that you shared, or maybe we are going to follow what is there in the sample of the proposal that these other guys did, because it's more like the other.
You're following, to answer your question here, you're following the guidelines in the assignment. The document that has been shared to you is meant to be, it's not like it's something that has everything that you have to include, right? It's meant to just illustrate how a proposal document is prepared. That's a fourth year. It's like a capstone project proposal for a fourth year course. I don't have an exemplar document for the previous group here. I was not really too happy with what they did, which is why I shared that as an example. So what you do is read through the assignment and make sure that you follow through with the assignment instructions. If the assignment instructions say these are the elements you're supposed to include, you do that. If you look at the sample again, the other thing is the sample document I provided you has 2 columns, right? That's not an APA, style document. So don't when something has been provided as an example in this particular case, it's not like you're saying you should base everything based on that. It's about the content. Okay, I use that as an example because I wanted to highlight the content that goes into the proposal document. I cut you short here because I wanted to make sure that you were following through with what needs to happen. But I'll let you finish.
Okay, I think it's okay for now, since you've said we follow through the elements, so it's okay. For now, you can continue, sir.
Great. So what you guys are going to do here as part of risk planning is that you're going to have to come up with avoidance strategies, minimization strategies, and contingency plans. And it'll be a lot easier for you to do this if you ask these important questions, right? What if for you to figure out, right, what sort of plan you're going to come up with, you identify a risk. It's like ask questions, leading questions like, what if one of our team member is unavailable at an important time, like we need to prepare the proposal? What are we going to do? That question is going to help you determine a contingency plan. You understand this? Contingency plan here. What if lecturers from where we need to collect data are not available? What are we going to do? If you've decided that your data collection is going to be done like that, what if fifth year students at Ridgeway are not available because you've put yourselves in a corner? So we're gonna do this with fifth year students at Ridgeway. Well, they're busy, right? Do you understand this? So ask those questions. And just some examples of risk and corresponding strategies. Just an example here. Like look at staff illness. This is something that happens often when you're in an environment like UNZA, right? Moving around. I always tell people here, working in a nasty environment here where, rails in the staircase, for instance, you accidentally touch them, and next thing you know, you're sick, like I've been unwell here. So illness is not something you can avoid. It's something that almost always happens. Like, look at this, right? The strategy we have for staff illness or project team member illness is you reorganize the team so that there is more overlap of work and people understand each other's jobs. So you have 5 of you. It's possible, right? Like this time of the year here, as we're transitioning to summer or something, it's a bit cold here. People are getting flus. They're putting on masks. They're sick like that, right? Can't work. The strategy, an important strategy there is you make sure that you organize yourself such as there's overlap. Each task at least must have maybe 3 people. Actually, I know it's like too much, but just 3 people for each task. So that two of them are sick, at least one person knows exactly what they were doing. Do you understand this? Anyhow. And then finally, right? And this is a thing here. It's not enough for you to just identify risks. You analyze the risks by determining the likelihood or the probability and the consequence, right? The impact it's going to have. and then finally just coming up with a plan. You must continuously monitor here. Throughout the duration of the project, the risks that you've identified, you're monitoring them on a regular basis, maybe every week, maybe every month, maybe every after 2 weeks. You're checking what is happening here. We're supposed to deliver by 12th September. How far are we from the finish here? If you notice that you're remaining with a month, for instance, like when you get to the 12th of August, and you haven't really done much, you should be worried, right? What are we going to do? Well, we are going to maybe come up with a plan such that we put in more work in this, right? So that we are done as soon as possible, something. So really, what you are doing as part of monitoring is you assess each of the identified risks regularly to decide whether or not it's becoming less probable or more probable. In some instances, as you get closer to the finish line, to finalizing the execution of the project, the likelihood, the probability that the risk is going to happen, it decreases. In some instances, the probability increases. you know, um, so you want to assess also the effects of the risk, because these things change. Because they change often, you have got to monitor these risks. And monitoring them is not enough, right? You must have extensive discussions of these things on a regular basis. Most of the projects that I run myself, like the EMI project, for instance, like the IFIL project, there's regular meetings every week. We're assessing progress because we're accountable, right? We have to deliver to our funders. The only way you'll be able to successfully deliver to your funders is if you are constantly monitoring the progress of the project. And that means not just looking at the what do they call this? Not just looking at the I know what that is, but not just looking at the timeline, but also the risks. Do you understand this? Again, just showcasing the indicators that you'll be using here to monitor something. Because if you're monitoring something, there's going to be, for instance, right? Listen, if you look at people here, maybe indicators, like if you're anything to do with people, like people being lazy, I'm sure you've seen them, right? That's life. Welcome to Life 101 here. People getting sick and stuff. Indicators would be poor morale, for instance, or maybe poor relationships amongst the team members. You're going to have a problem with. That's an indicator that you can use to monitor whether something is going wrong in regards to risk identified with people, project team members. Yeah. Telltale signs. Somebody is missing meetings 2 weeks in a row, or you had 2 planned meetings and this person is not showing up, right? Every time there's a meeting, they'll come up with some very elaborate story. I had to go and see my mom or something. Okay. The next thing you know here, no, there was a funeral. My cousin's friend's sister's husband or something died, right? Okay. I don't know about that here. You understand what I mean? That's a sign. Those are indicators that can follow. Yes, there's a question? Yes, Christopher.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just on the same risk management. So, for example, if let's say you identify a risk, for example, time management itself, time constraints, then you say, so to mitigate these time constraints, we had to put in weekly milestones and team accountability. Can that be okay for the part of risk management?
Well, if it's time issue here, I don't know. It depends as a team, right? That could be okay. Depends on how you're reasoning. But my argument here would be, I don't think so. I think a correct plan here is, if it's anything to do with time, you say the plan here is we're going to uh, be meeting often, or if project team members were on average putting in maybe 1 week to the project, 1 hour every week, it's now going to be at least 2 hours every week. You understand? It's things that will either enable you to avoid that risk, minimize it, or act as a workaround. But it could work, I guess. Could work. One of the things that will help you here is you're going to have to do this exercise, by the way. Sit down as a team very, very soon, because you have got to submit this by Monday next week. And for each risk, right, try and see. You identify it and then you analyze it. as part of planning, you then determine whether you need a contingency plan, whether you can come up with avoidance strategies or minimization strategies, and then figure out exactly how you're going to be monitoring those things. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, we are done with project management. When we meet tomorrow, we're going to start the research. We're going to be covering stuff to do with the methodology, but here's the thing. I have transitioned to another class here, but here's the thing here. What we've discussed here is supposed to get into your research proposal documents. I will update the document in the event that it was missing the RACI metrics and risk management. These are important things that you must add there. And then more importantly, and we can discuss this, I guess, tomorrow, but the issue of the budget here, I don't have to tell you what sort of how to prepare a budget, but I'll talk about it when we meet tomorrow, I guess. So with that being said, in case of any questions, I'm going to ask you guys to hold on to your questions until we meet tomorrow or something, because I have another class I have to go to. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to be, again, reaching out to you. I'll have to apologize. I may not be available during class tomorrow, but I shall communicate nonetheless, just to clarify that. Hopefully we can, you guys have time later in the afternoon or evenings or something for us to have class. Thank you very much. Good day.